Hello and welcome to Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, Stephan Spencer, and today I'm very excited to have Erik Luhrs with us. Erik is known as the Bruce Lee of revenue generation and is the creator of Revenue Kung Fu. He works with entrepreneurs, experts, leaders, and founders who are driven by a purpose, mission, or vision that far exceeds their current level of success and helps them to move beyond whatever holds them back so they can rapidly grow their business and achieve their desired outcomes. Erik, it's so great to have you on the show.
Well, thanks for having me, man.
So I've experienced your work firsthand. We've done a little bit of coaching together, and you helped me with an important breakthrough. And I would love to talk about how you, tap into the wisdom and the foresight and the insight that you do. Like how does this work for you? Because you're not a typical coach.
No, I'm not a typical. Just ask my parents. Yeah, well, okay. And most of this is guessing. And you and I, like you said, we've done, we've spoken a number of times, and I believe I told you the story about when I was a little kid. I was, I guess, what you would call psychic. I saw, the nicest thing I ever saw was a leprechaun in Cape Cod. Probably the most benign thing I ever saw was a leprechaun in Cape Cod. I saw bird creatures that people sent spiritually, and I saw unembodied hands stuck on windows, and I talked to dead grandmothers on phones that weren't plugged in, and it was like, and I was a kid who was terrified of horror movies, and I was literally living in one, and my brother loves horror movies, right? So he'd watch them all the time, and I'd be like, I'm going to see that now. So, so around the age of, I guess, 5 or so, maybe 6, I had an experience that was like, that's it. And I basically closed the door on it. I wasn't consciously aware at the time, but I guess some part of me was like, they say, like when you go from 6 to 7, you're kind of going from, all subconscious to starting to be, have an analytical mind or whatever. So I guess my analytical mind woke up or was born at that moment. I was like, okay, yeah, no more of this crap. And for a long time, I guess that was, it just kind of stopped. In my 20s, I became interested in psychic stuff again, or for the first time, really interested in it instead of having it just be part of me. And, things would, I started reading about it. I started reading about past life stuff and how to kind of get into, psychic mindset, and little knowings would start coming to me and whatever. But I didn't make much of it, and, really focused on my corporate work. I was trying to be a screenwriter, was doing martial arts. So I was really focused out there, right? As time went on, I started learning about energy healing. So I was kind of arcing back to it without realizing it. I kept thinking, well, I'm doing it out here. I didn't, I'm reading about psychic stuff and kind of, yeah, but, I'm still kicking people's butt with my martial arts, and I'm still firing people at my job, exciting stuff, real world stuff. And then, went into, conversely went into, or at the same time was going into corporate consulting and all this other kind of stuff. And it was like corporate. But I still had this pulling to do more, my free time was still like, Reiki and, getting more into, yoga and meditation. And ultimately, I became a business coach. And when I started becoming a business coach, when you're corporate consulting, it's all like analyzing stuff, and I create the magical binders, and anybody who's a management consultant knows what I'm talking about when I say the binders. Here's $500,000 for 4 binders and 6 months of work. Yay! That we'll never use. So here I am coaching people, and I guess, and I was reading more and more stuff like Abraham Hicks and meditating more, and and I would start kind of giving them advice. Now, the strategic stuff was the strategic stuff, very simplistic, make more phone calls or something. That was, it's whatever. But then I don't know, just kind of something would come out of nowhere, and I'd say, blah, blah, blah about, deal with this thing with your father, or, get past this thing with, your partner, and him not being so honest with you, and like, what are you talking about? Not being honest with me? And I'm like, well, I can tell by how you're acting. He hasn't been completely honest with you. Like, well, yeah, he hasn't, and it was something he hadn't said to me, but I just sloughed it off as I'm good at reading people, because again, everything has to be practical, everything has to be real world and tangible. I studied NLP, so I'm like, all right, this just must be NLP stuff. I'm just a master, and I don't even realize it. And as time went on over the years, and I was developing more and more systems, and I was working more one-on-one with people, more and more stuff just kind of came. And again, I was always like, oh, this is just more off the lead gen stuff. This is just more off the positioning stuff. This is just, oh, okay, this is just motivational stuff. And then, at some point over the last, I'd say, year or two, it just was becoming more and more like, out of the blue, stuff I couldn't possibly have known, and saying it, things that, and I'd be in the middle of coaching them, and I'd be like, what's this issue with your mother? They'd be like, the hell are you talking about? We had literally just been talking about writing a headline, and I'd be like, yeah, you got some issue with your mom or something? They'd be like, well, yeah, we just had a horrible fight, but did I tell you about that? I'm like, no, you didn't. How the hell, and because it had kind of disguised itself as business stuff over all the years, I was just thinking, oh, it's good coaching, but it was really channeling. But it wasn't me. It wasn't my stuff. It wasn't like, and that was where I used to, people were like, Erik's brilliant, right? Because I'd come up with things. And now I realize looking back, the work that I did that really made a difference in people's business and their life and everything. Like, I told you about my miracle clients who went from 150K to, 10 million pipeline in 8 weeks and stuff. I always thought it was me, that I'm brilliant in my systems and everything. I mean, my strategies are pretty good. But,
you are pretty good, yeah.
Yeah, they are. I mean, I have created 3 of them, but a lot of the breakthrough stuff was helping that person step into somebody new. But the way that it was helping them step into somebody new was that their higher self couldn't directly talk to them, right? Because they were like me 10 years ago or 20 years ago, everything tangible. So when the higher self would try to talk to them, this nice quiet voice up there, they couldn't hear it because I got to work, the amygdala is hijacked everything, like afraid of this and take care of that, and I pick up the kids.
Yeah, scarcity.
Scarcity. So then, it was like, so it was just talking through me. And it would come up with cool ideas like, hey, you really want to do this. And so I'd be like, hey, you should try this. And they'd be like, that's great. And I'd be like, yeah, I know. I have no idea where it came from. But now I realize it was always them. It was always their higher self. I just act as a channel, for that. And so I would say even up until about 8-9 months ago, I was afraid to take that on. Still like everything has to be boxed into a system. Everything has to be, I have to come at the world purely practical and purely, one-dimensional because that's how everybody else does. And and it all goes back to, and if I come out there and say, I'm talking to your higher self, they'll think I'm a freak and nobody will talk to me anymore. The kids will leave me alone at the playground. But the truth is that that's what I do, and that's along with all the other stuff that I do. But it's all part and parcel. And I guess the greatest thing is as I teach people, you have to accept yourself. And I'd be a pretty crappy mentor if I wasn't doing the exact thing that I was able to do, to better themselves and to step into the next self. You have to accept who you are now to move into that next self. So anyway, that was probably a very long way of answering your question, but
Well, that was
hopefully I
a
did somewhere.
that was a beautiful answer, and I have to tell you, I'm reading a book now by Bruce Wilkinson called "You Were Born for This," and
Mm-hmm.
there's a story in the first chapter, or maybe it's the introduction, where this guy Jimmy, he doesn't really believe much in anything, you know, higher power or
Right.
miracles or anything like that. But he ends up finding himself at a you were born for this seminar taught by Bruce Wilkinson, the
Mm-hmm.
author of the book, and he decides, okay, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to deliver everyday miracles, and I'll just give it a go. And he sees this guy, I forget where, like a construction site or something, and the guy is totally disconnected from, like, he doesn't believe in anything. And his marriage is on the rocks, and he's in this conversation with the guy Jimmy, who had just gone to this seminar. And normally Jimmy would just brush this off and try to change subjects as quickly as possible because he doesn't want to get into this guy's marriage and all the problems and so forth. But he decides, okay, I'm going to keep listening. And then he gets inspired to use what he learned at the seminar. And two things about this that are really key. One is you need to give God a minute. In other words, don't just start talking, wait, and let it come to you. And secondly, no pressure. The miracle is God's to do, not yours. So you just channel whatever shows up. And this guy tells the guy, after giving him a minute, he actually tells him to go grab a pen and paper. And then the guy comes back, and by then he's like in a more receptive state, and then he just blurts out, "You need to go home and make your bed." And the guy's like, "What? How did you know that this is like one of the key things about my marriage that my wife hates about me, because I always get up after her and I never make the bed." And she just points to that as this is just reflective of all the stuff that's not right in our relationship. How did you know this? And he's like, I don't know. It just came to me. Like
Yeah.
how it came to you. And
Yeah.
so the guy went home during lunch and made the bed before his wife got home from work. And that probably saved their marriage.
All
Right?
right, man.
So
Probably
instead
all.
of writing a letter, it's like, this is the way that he needed to deliver the "I'm committed to working this out with you and to the covenant of our marriage." He makes the bed. So pretty cool. And that's the story that came to me that I just read a few days ago when you were talking about your story. And I love that you can own that you can say, I channel. I bring stuff that's not of me, but I'm just a receiver of, and I deliver it at the right moment for the person, and it changes their life. And it really is a miracle. It really is. They need a miracle in that moment. You're able to deliver it to them. And for me, I felt that with you, that I needed to hear what you had to say. And when we were doing a coaching session and you just started channeling, I was surprised. I didn't even know that you did that. I just thought, oh, well, this is going to be a coaching session. I'm going to
Yep.
learn some good businessy stuff. And instead, I learned really important life stuff, more important than even life. It's like bigger picture stuff
Yeah.
beyond just this incarnation kind of stuff. Like I was distracted by the things that weren't important. And I have mentioned on this podcast many times how I have thousands of items in my to-do list.
Hmm.
And it's almost like I treat it as a badge of honor, but it's not. It's a dysfunction. And it's also keeping me from my higher purpose, from my soul purpose. And you pointed this out to me in a very compelling, powerful way where it finally sunk in. I've read lots of books by like David Allen, Getting Things Done. I've read The One Thing by Gary Keller. All this stuff is great, and it's motivational and inspiring, but it didn't stick. It only stuck once I had you sharing what you shared with me, and which was that I'm trying to climb the mountain laterally and put all these stakes into the rock face all across the side of the mountain instead of going straight up. And that was that was a metaphor that really resonated for me. And I need to climb that mountain. I need to get to the top. I need to fulfill my soul purpose, and not just, when I say soul, not like soul like S-O-L-E, I mean S-O-U-L, why I'm here in this incarnation. And you delivered that message to me at the right time, in the right way, and it wasn't you. You were just the receiver. You were just the messenger. And that was beautiful, and thank you.
You're very welcome. Yes, I'm the walkie-talkie for Source. So, yay! I have to change my batteries every 6 months, or I start going off the rails.
It's pretty cool. And another story that this reminds me of, but actually what you spoke about at the beginning, about how you shut the door on psychic abilities because you didn't want to be a freak, and you were scared of these horrible things that were showing up in like in night at your window and stuff, and in your room. Oh my goodness! Like the Sixth Sense sort of stuff, like that movie.
Yeah.
That was a haunting movie. Beautifully done, but really disturbing. So Mark Nelson was on this podcast last year, and he saved a family member's life because of his interview with me. And I went into that in the episode, how he saved her life, and it was no coincidence that it was at the exact moment that she was in trouble, and he was able to confirm what it was, and that it was something she needed to immediately go to the hospital for. Otherwise, she wouldn't have gone. She was not going to go, and that saved her life. And it was not just him; it was Source, it was angels, however you want to refer to it, that were conspiring to make this happen at the right time. The only interview that I did in a 3-week time period happened to be at that exact moment that we needed it. And Mark, who has become a good friend since, he shared how his father had been murdered when he was like 11 or 12, and then his spirit showed up at school, and that made Mark very uncomfortable. And then he showed up again, and then Mark said, "Don't come back, don't bother me, I don't want this to stop it." And then slammed the door.
Yeah.
No more psychic abilities, no more psychic phenomenon until in his 20s, and then he slowly cracks the door open again. And now he's an award-winning psychic, and he's been chosen as the top person on different TV shows, the top psychic / medium. Pretty cool. But it's not unusual to slam the door shut. So what was it that most made the impact or the difference for you in terms of cracking that door back open and taking a chance at being labeled as a weird or whatever, like freak or any of that sort of marginalizing sort of language?
Well, as I said, in my 20s, the interest was there. I forget the
but what sparked it? Yeah, what sparked that interest?
Well, the book "Many Lives, Many Masters." I read that, and I was like, "Oh, okay, so past lives, and maybe past lives can solve this life." And I went to, I forget the author's name, but I went to a seminar that he had in New York City. And, he was talking about, he did like a little thing where he's like, okay, the person next to you, give them a piece of jewelry or something, and, see if you can get something off of it.
Psychometry. Yep.
Right. So this girl is sitting next to me and she hands me a necklace. And so, like, I'm not really well, I shouldn't say, I had also guessed a series of numbers purely that I shouldn't have known like a few days earlier or something. So it was like, it just popped into my head when I was having an interaction with one of my friends at the office, and it was exactly the number he needed. So it was like, so there I am, I'm holding this necklace, and I'm like, I don't know what the hell to expect. I'm like, all right, I'm closing my eyes, and I just start seeing like a little creature, and I'm like, it's like in a cage, and I'm like, what the, and I was like, I see a little animal in a cage running around and like straw and stuff. And the girl was like, oh my God, yeah, my grandmother, that's her, that she had a hamster that she loved. And then she died. My grandmother and the hamster are both dead. That's my grandmother's necklace you're holding in your hand. She really loved this, and I'm like, and I'm like, holy crap, like there was no reason for me to be thinking about a hamster in the middle of a church in New York City in the middle of a psychic seminar. But there I am. I'm like, okay, here's your necklace. Get back. You know. So, but it was kind of like, all right, so it's kind of maybe there, and then, for a while I did read stuff. And then, like I said, I was getting interested in the energy healing. And so in energy healing, I read the book, what was it? Touch of Hope, Dean Kraft, and he outlines a meditation that you do before you start doing the energy healing. So I was kind of like, all right, and I started getting into meditating, at least his version of meditation. I started kind of feeling energy around me, and I'm like, okay, and so you start mixing, and it's all the same thing at the end of the day, right? Tapping into that energy is kind of tapping any energy outside of you is the energy. It's really the energy of you. Everything is, my philosophy is everything is all from source. So everything is this, we're all from the same energy. So everything I like and don't like in the world, and know and don't know, and everything's still all me anyway. And it's still, so that energy, if I'm seeing a hand on a window or I'm feeling energy outside my body getting ready to heal, it's like, it's all coming from the same place. So over time, I started saying, okay, I remember reading a book or two about being psychic and trying to be more psychic, and like, okay, and I'm trying to force myself. And I guess the biggest obstacle was that I was expecting it to come, you see the Hollywood movies. And so I was expecting like, big tunnels of light, sound effects, and, and God appearing and be like, telling me stuff. And, and because I didn't have that, I was like, I guess I must not be psychic. But then some stupid little thing would come to me, and as I was talking to somebody, and I would slough it off to, well, I've also studied neurolinguistic programming and silva mind control and, all this other stuff. It's got to be that. And for the better part of 15 years, I literally just haven't putting two and two together. I just always racked it up. So about, beginning of last year, when I put all my corporate work aside and I kind of came to that epiphany that it was really the transformation of people, how I'd really helped people make huge jumps in their business was I had helped them to step into a new beingness. And then the new beingness led to, changing the beingness changed the business. And I said, okay, I want to focus on that. And I think that was really when I guess my psychic self started saying, okay, you're playing with us again full time now. You realize that, right, dodo head? Like, you can't walk out there and say, I'm going to start working on beingness and, but I'm going to do it practically. The 8 tangible steps of changing your beingness. Like, yeah, it's not really like that. So I was like, okay. And then that's when I started noticing, that's all of a sudden when it was like, wait a minute, because I was working with clients. and stuff was coming from here. It kind of kept coming from the same area. It was kind of like over here,
You're you're
you know.
you're motioning for the folks who are only listening and not
Oh, for
seeing
the
the
folks who are like,
video.
I'm motioning out to like my upper left-hand side.
There you go.
It was kind of always, and if you see me, like even when I'm talking to you and I kind of keep looking, it's kind of like, because it's kind of feeding me it's an extension of me, but it's feeding me things. I'm getting stuff off of you. I don't know what the difference between you and me is right now, because we're going back and forth. Um, but I just started kind of noticing that it was coming from there
Hmm.
every time with different people. And then I realized, crap, it's always kind of come from there, hasn't it? I just never paid attention for a decade and a half. And then it was like, crap, I'm channeling. Then I sat on that for a couple of months, because I was like, I would still talk to people and I'm like, all right, I'm channeling. I'm not going to say dang crap about it though, because then they're going to think I'm a freak. Then they're going to hang up on me. And then lo and behold, I guess about around the summertime, it was actually, the group that you and I both belong to, the JVMM. I met a lot of great people. And I was talking to a number of them, and they were saying, yeah, I meditate and I'm into spirituality. And so I kind of started saying, well, I kind of channel sometimes. And they would be like, really? And they, all of a sudden it was like, you don't think I'm a freak? I'm like, no, it's great. And so all of a sudden I was like, poof, and things would start coming to me for them. And I'd say, okay, well, in that case, blah, blah, blah. And then they go and they make the phone call or they do the thing and they'd be like, you were right. I'm like, okay. So just cracked the egg and started saying, all right. And now I'm telling people in a practical sense, I say, look, you can't go out there in the world of business and you can't stand out by fitting in. And if you're denying who you really are and what you're really about, and you're going out there and you're saying, I'm going to try and be like everybody else, then nobody's going to pay attention to you. You're automatically commoditized. That can be in business. That can be in your personal life. You can't stand out by fitting in. In today's world, people only want the things that are interesting are the things that stand out.
Yeah.
If when you go to, when you're at the checkout line at the supermarket and there's 10 different types of gum, they're still all gum, and that's what the world of, and I apply a lot of this to business. The world of business has become, people are expecting a peppermint flavored gum. I'll be a peppermint flavored gum. The fact that there's 25 peppermint flavored gums already they don't seem to think like, because they think, well, there's a market for it, because that's what you and I, I'm sure you've heard the same thing. If there's already existing market for it, that proves that there's a market for it. So you should try to go for that market, right? Because that's a hungry market and blah, blah, blah. But what everybody does is they go out and they compete. And it's because they say, okay, well, I'm going to try and do what everybody else is doing. I'm basically going to try to copy everybody. And think about the people in your life that are the most interesting. The people in your life that are the most interesting are the people who are unlike anybody else in your life.
Yeah.
Those are the people you want to talk about to other people. My friend Jim, he's freaking out of his mind, but whatever. He likes to hang glide upside down naked. Ooh, but you can't stop talking about Jim, but all these other people, who all go to 9-to-5 job and blah, blah, blah. And like, oh yeah, there's Steve and there's Frank and, but you don't talk about those people. So in your personal life, if you're a far younger man than me, and you're still looking for the love of your life, and you're going out there trying to be like every other guy out there or every other girl out there, you say, well, I want to fit in. You don't want to fit in. You want to make an impact on the world, and the only way you're going to do that is by bringing your genuine self, and that means accepting yourself, warts and all, because your warts are what you would consider a wart is what somebody else considers beauty. I considered the channeling thing for a long time, because I guess it kind of smacked of my childhood. I kind of considered it like, if I say that people who are serious business people will immediately say, okay, freak, and stop listening to me. They'll go looking for somebody who just says tactic, 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 tactic. But then if I go out there saying tactic, 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 I'm the same as, then I become another face on Facebook, another ad on Facebook. And what value am I to them in business? And as you personally experienced, what I do, goes well beyond business, because once I understood that beingness is what your business flows from your beingness, not the other way around.
Yeah.
So when I understood that, it behooved, there's a word for you, behooved. It behooved me to bring that aspect of myself into the game. And at some point I just had to say, you know what, might I lose a few people? Yeah, but those were the people I wasn't supposed to help anyway.
Right. Well, that reminds me of a beautiful quote I heard from Bob Allen. Robert Allen, he was a past guest on the show. I've been in his mastermind before, and he said that you're not here for the frowny faces. You're here for the smiley faces. Don't try to win over the frowny faces. Just focus on the smiley faces.
Yeah.
And there are people who resonate with your message and your style and your integrity and your vulnerability, and they're going to want to work with you. And the people who don't, who are disconnected, who are feeling no sense of higher purpose beyond just this life and making money or building whatever it is they're building, they're not for you, and that's okay.
Yeah. And it's interesting because think about first I don't know about your childhood, but I would say most people's childhoods, and then in the world, your well-meaning parents and religious leaders and teachers and everybody are always, they think they're helping you by saying, fit in, be quiet, sit down, dress like that one, talk like this one, do this, go there, be this. And then even when we break out, we become independent folks like you and me. And then we get like training in marketing. You go to a lot of marketing. The first thing they teach you is, try to, find what other people are doing that's great and copy it. Find the market that's existing already and copy it and fit in. And so it's kind of like the same lesson. Like I just paid $10,000 to learn the same garbage my parents were teaching. I'm just now learning it to do it in marketing instead of nursery school or whatever. But at the end of the day, and that's why I think everybody already has. In NLP, they taught us, everybody has the resources they need. Everybody already has the resources they need to get everything they want in life. And I remember hearing that, and my first thought was, well, where's my $1 million? But it's true. Within all of us, I think, is the answer to every question we have. It's just getting beyond conditioning back to ourselves, unlearning what we've learned, unconditioning what we've been conditioned into. Abraham Hicks says, everything that you want in life, you want a car, a house, a job, a person in the bed next to you. You want it because you think in the having of it, you will be happy.
Yeah. And
what you really want is happiness. And that's why Abraham Hicks is always saying, so just start with happiness.
Yeah. Pick the feeling you want rather than try to get the thing that you believe will generate the feeling. You are in control of generating the feelings on your own, even without having the things, the circumstances that you think will bring you that feeling.
Yeah. And that's, and when you realize that, and it's interesting because, as people who sell courses or whatever, the first fear is, well, if I really teach people that, then nobody's going to buy my course. But by the same token, it's my job or my purpose in this world to get people to kind of understand that they are their universe. and that they need to let go of, everybody's in control of their universe anyway, but the thing is, are you controlling the universe that you want to create, or are you controlling a universe that somebody else told you you should create? Are you living your life, or are you living somebody else's model for you? You don't find, and that's why, when you make a lot of money, and I literally know billionaires who are depressed, and the first thought you have is, how could anybody who has $1 billion be depressed? The guy's got a boat this is bigger than Rhode Island. Not that Rhode Island's all that big, but still, it's a big boat and multiple houses. It depressed, and because the accumulation of things and the gold medalists. I have a dear friend. She was a gold medalist in the Olympics, and I remember being at a seminar with her where they had us break a piece of wood, martial arts style. Now, for me, I already had 3 black belts at the time, so it was like, if they put the wood from me, like, bip, tap it, it breaks and whatever. I'm like, I've done
With
this
your
a
pinky.
I've done, you can do it with my nose if you like. So it was no, but put it in front of her, and she broke it, and the whole seminar had been, this was like the big crescendo on the 3rd day or whatever. She breaks it. She just starts sobbing, and she starts saying, I feel nothing. I feel nothing. And I remember at the time, I tried to help her as best I could, but I was in the middle of, I was one of the participants in the seminar. So I'm like, she's recovered now. But looking back, because I could never figure out what the hell was wrong, right? I thought, you're an Olympic gold medalist, you break in this board, whatever, this is your breakthrough. It was because the conditioning, it had all been about the physical. And part of her wanted to break through emotionally and spiritually. Mm-hmm. But she'd been so hard and fast conditioned to physical. She was expecting a spiritual breakthrough from breaking through a physical board. I don't think she was
which some people do get.
Which some people do get, but it's not guaranteed.
Yeah.
And and ultimately, but it's not the board. It's that you give yourself permission at that moment. And she didn't give herself the permission. Later in life, she has, which is good. But that's the whole thing, is that so many of us are running around now in our, I focus on business, but in our business and our personal lives, as being parents, as being friends, as being children, as being lovers, as being observers, we're running around focused on the physical, and on the physical display of something. And the physical display of something is always for the benefit of others. It's never for ourselves. So everything that you want in life, I would kind of put an addendum on, I guess maybe onto Abraham Hicks' teaching here, which is, you think you want everything you want in life because you think it'll make you happy. And you find the happiness first, and that's true. But everything you want in life, I would go and look again, and maybe do this every day, or every time you're chasing a thing. How much do I really want this thing because I feel myself in it? Like for me, it's an Aston Martin. Do you feel yourself, but it could be a house, it could be a vacation, it could be whatever it is. When you feel yourself in it, is it because you want to take pictures of it and post it on Facebook and say, ha, screw you, I made it? Way, I win. Or is it, can you go and could you go without ever posting on Facebook? That's the whole thing, is I sit there and I think about my, when I'm visual, what I call experientializing into my Aston Martin. I there's no part in there where I'm taking a picture of it and posting it to Facebook.
Hmm.
It's all about the sensation, and that's the whole thing. I think is that um, we come into our greatest power when we give up, as Abraham Maslow said, being self-actualized is being free of the good opinion of others. Um, I think that that's when we really step into it. My little addendum to that is, self-actualization is being free of the good opinion of others, including yourself. Then I think is when you truly let go of all conditioning and step back into the truth of who you are. So hopefully that means something because I know I'm rambling, but this is what's
Yeah, you're looking up and to your left.
I'm looking straight up into it. I'm like, all right, I'm saying what you're telling me to say. But that's I guess that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay, I love it. And what would you do differently? And this is going to be, I think, instructive for our listeners. That's why I'm asking. What would
Sure.
you, Erik, do differently if you didn't have to make money anymore? If money just showed up in obscene quantities,
Hmm.
what would you do differently?
Well, I'd still be I'd still be mentoring people the way that I do, because this is my passion,
Yeah.
and I'll be doing this when I'm sitting on, when I'm smoking $100 bills, I'll still be doing this. Um, but why the hell I would ever want to do that, I have no idea. But apparently that's what you do when you get rich. You smoke $100 bills.
I wouldn't
Um,
recommend it. It's not very healthy.
probably not a smart idea. But what would I do differently?
Would you
I got to
still be
admit,
doing courses? Would you still, uh, have the revenue kung fu
oh
program?
yeah,
Like what would
yeah.
you do the same, and what would you be doing differently?
I mean, my business would still be the same. Revenue kung fu is just a piece of a much larger construct. But revenue kung fu in and of itself is so big that that's why I don't come full tilt boogie with, if I told you it's only the toe of something much larger, you probably could, I blow people's minds with revenue kung fu. So I'll just stop there for now. Um, but I guess I would dive deeper in. I'd probably, I'd probably just pay to have large events and bring people to them for free. I'd do a lot more free stuff actually, um, just because, and I would just want to spread this message even further. Um, except now, instead of having to find wonderful folks like yourself to kind of get the message out there, I would just start paying to get the message out there. It's my I look at the if I'm getting up on my soapbox here, please tell me. But I look at the world today and I see, the global warming, and I see the deforestation, and I see plastic in the ocean and plastic in our drinking water, and all the things that are, and the things that are happening to humans' bodies. If you really sit back, you can't deny there's the atmosphere, at least, and even humanity is going in a certain direction, and it's not a good one.
Hmm.
And even though I don't have grandchildren yet, I want them to be able to breathe, just breathe. You know what I mean? Um,
I do.
so I want them to breathe. I want them to be able to drink clean water. um, I want them to be able to go out in the sun without living in a dome. I want them to be free of disease. And as I said, within every human being is the answer to all that they need. So what I really would love to see is the tapping of full human potential. And we're not doing that by any stretch of the imagination. Very few people, the Elon Musks of the world are starting to scratch at it. I think mankind ultimately, we already have to start looking thinking of ourselves not only as a global community, but as an interstellar community. You know, we have to start looking at the moon. We have to start looking at asteroid mining. We have to start looking at Mars. Because, you know, we're at some point in time, we're going to get too big for this place. And things are growing, you know, humankind is expanding exponentially, you know, not logarithmically. So that's why they keep moving things closer. You know, the ice caps will be gone in 100 years, and then it was 50 years, and now it's 20 years. And it's because humankind is, you know, and in that growth, the consumption and creation and blah, 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 and all that stuff. So if we continue to live in a world where our entire focus is how do I sell another something on Facebook? How do I move two more units per hour of this? You know, how do I cut the costs of production on that? We are ultimately cheating ourselves and cheating the world and making the world a worse place to live, literally, not figuratively. And we're not unleashing human potential. We're actually trying to channel human potential into selling more. And that's what, you know, now that these generations are being brought up to consume. And the world is not going to be saved by generations of consumers. It's going to be saved by generations of creators.
Yeah.
And we need to unleash that potential. And that's really what I want to see. And I guess maybe that's sort of underneath it all is what drove me to say, okay, you know, I see dead people. But to basically, you know, wouldn't that be great? You know, this is Bruce Willis. You know, but you know,
and the twist ending on that movie. Oh my God, that like kept me up for weeks.
Exactly. There you go, man. M. Night Shyamalan. But that's, you know, that's the whole thing is that that's why I'm doing what I'm doing. So if you put $1 billion in my hand, would I buy nice stuff? Sure, you know, but you know, I'd be starting charities. I'd be spreading this message. I'd be investing in innovation. I'd be, you know, I'd just be accelerating what I already want to do. I would just have a bankroll to do it now.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. All right. So let's give some kind of quote unquote real world wrap up stuff to our listener who realizes, I'm sure by now, because they're still listening, that there's so much more than just the quote unquote real world, the tangible, like dollar bills and you know, the stuff that shows up in the mailbox and all that sort of stuff. But tell us a bit more about what Revenue Kung Fu is and some of your other programs, because initially that was what compelled me to have coaching calls with you. Was I didn't know about your channeling abilities. I just said, this is cool stuff. I want to work with you. And so for just a few minutes, let's talk about what some of that quote unquote real world stuff is. And by the way, I just was kind of given this by Jeff Goins, who is an amazing guy and was a past guest on the show. But he taught a workshop for writers just a week ago or 2 weeks ago that I attended online. And what I ended up getting from that, for my book that I'm working on, a self-help book, is that, you know how people think that the real world is where all the action is, and you know, that's and that the invisible world is not tangible. Well, in reality, the invisible world is more real than the visible world, and that's what my book is going to be about. So I just thought I'd share that for you and for the listener, because real world stuff of making money and paying the bills and making sure that everybody gets fed just kind of magically happens when you focus on the invisible world. I think that was gifted to me, really.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't like it was more than coincidence that I ended up getting that amazing feedback from Jeff that really helped crystallize what my self-help book is going to be about. So I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because, we call it woo-woo, right? But Einstein was talking about this stuff, 70 years ago or 80 years ago,
Yes, he was.
saying that all of reality is affected by the observer, and, that the things that exist only exist because of the observer. And even today, physicists are proving this over and over and over again. That the things, only when you look at something does it crystallize down into a physical form. And the moment you look away from it, it goes back to a wave of potentiality. And then, but it's like, yeah, but how do I get more likes on Facebook? Like, I think you're missing the bigger picture here, man.
Yeah, don't you know that Facebook thing's rigged anyways?
Exactly. Like, if you want more likes on Facebook, just go to Fiverr and pay somebody $100 and you'll get as many likes as you want.
Yeah, right. Well, you know the quote from Wayne Dyer,
Mm-hmm.
we're not human beings having a spiritual experience, we're spiritual beings having a human experience.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
powerful, such a beautifully said statement. Just really rings true.
Well, always flip the coin, because it's like everything in life is like a coin. There's the side, there's the face, the side of the coin you're looking at, and the side of the coin you're ignoring. And limitation is always when you're looking at the wrong side of the coin. And if you just, it's kind of like the Wizard of Oz. There's always something behind the curtain, and even behind that curtain, there's another curtain and another curtain and whatever. So yeah, this is why I don't believe in limitation. There is no such thing as limitation there is no limitation. It's just we create limitation to have the experience, to have that physical experience. Because without it, we're still back in the realm of pure potentiality. We're still, as Abraham Hicks says, non-physically focused. So we physically focus to have the experience that we couldn't possibly have in non-physical. I was trying to explain that to my daughter the other night. She was trying to ask me what I believe in terms of, God or source or whatever. Had to go into this long story, but I will not bore you with that. But in terms of real world stuff, I mean, I started out, now my only work is Revenue Kung Fu. And that's because Revenue Kung Fu is the culmination of everything I've been doing up until this point. So when I first created my first system, it was Gurus Selling. And that's how I became known as, at that point in time, I became known as the Bruce Lee of sales. And Bruce Lee had a very interesting way of going about things, which was nothing was ever stagnant with him. One of his sayings was, use what's useful, discard what's useless. And having no way is way, having no limitation is limitation. But using what was useful, he was constantly learning from everybody. He had no problem having done a particular punch style for years and then abandoning it if he found something that worked better. Like, this works better, boom, done. The other one's gone. And so he was always evolving. And that's what I ended up doing. I didn't intend to, but I was always evolving. So when I started with Guru Selling back about 12 years ago, I thought that would be the end all be all. Became Bruce Lee of sales. And then I got into lead generation because that was the evolution. It was actually sparked by the statement that the aim of marketing is to make sales superfluous by Peter Drucker. So I started getting into marketing instead of sales and focused in on lead gen. And then having done NLP, I understood everything was working at the subconscious. So I created subconscious lead generation. Now I had evolved to that. And then I wanted to say, okay, well, how do I better leverage lead gen? And that's how I moved up into positioning. I was out Druckering Drucker, to put it another way. And and so I was kind of moving, and I was doing tactics, right? It was all the practical stuff: better leverage sales, lead gen, better leverage lead gen, positioning, better leverage positioning, brand. And so I was literally at the point about 2 years ago where I was going to do a branding thing, and that's where this whole experiment started. Where I kind of said, rather than creating a third system, because by then I had guru selling, I had subconscious lead generation, I had peerless positioning, and I was going to do, fill in the blank branding. And then instead of doing that, I asked myself, well, what comes before branding? Because that's what I'm always doing now. I'm looking for what comes before, what comes before. So I was like, well, I guess before the brand comes the founder. Well, what comes before the founder? Well, I guess their mindset. Well, what comes before mindset? Well, I guess beingness. And that was, and by pushing those questions, that's when the lights went back on. And it was like, okay, Erik, you've come home. After 45 years, welcome back. You're back to where you started. All those, when you were that little kid staring up into the sky. And that's how the last 2 years. Yeah, welcome back. But that was the whole thing. So now, my sessions are certainly not, when I'm working with clients. Is there channeling? Sure. Is there tactics? Sure. Is there transformation? Sure. Because what I teach is that you have to have tactics and transformation in order for you to grow tactically or application wise. So your business is just a vehicle. It's not, what's a business for? I want to make money. No, that's a byproduct. Your business is actually your vehicle for self-development through your life. And you have to have that transformation as a person, and that's what allows the business to grow. So as you're growing, your business can only grow to the extent that you do. So as you grow, your business grows, and that's really the work that I do now. But your business you can't just go out there and say, well, I'm going to just do purely self-development, because you get to a certain point and you're like, okay, well, I've evolved to this very high level. You need a physically focused application to bring it into existence, because there was no point in evolving to this higher level to do nothing with it other than to know to yourself, well, I'm really evolved. Like, okay, but how does that make an impact in the world or in your business or to your family? So, it's basically like, having a car you never drive and a garage you never go to. Like, okay, it's there. I'll never see you again. Yay. So, you have to have that application piece. So revenue kung fu is working with folks who have chosen the discipline of increasing revenue in their business, as opposed to, piano kung fu or better parenting kung fu or whatever. And kung fu is a skill acquired through perseverance. So they're committing to that as the focal point for their business or for their life. This is going to be my physical outlet for my spiritual growth. And kung fu, or what we call kung fu, like I said, means skill acquired through perseverance. What most people think of as kung fu is actually called wushu, but it was made famous by the Shaolin monks. And what people forget about the Shaolin monks is they were monks. So they spent as much time per day meditating as they did learning how to jump 8 feet in the air and spin a sword. And they actually learned martial arts so that they were healthier, so that they could sit longer and meditate longer and get into a deeper state of meditation and reach enlightenment faster. And we have bastardized the understanding of them by putting it all about their ability to kick somebody's butt. It wasn't about the kicking of the butt. It was about reaching Shambhala. When I'm working with people, that's the background. That's the point. People want to reach the Shambhala. We all want what we want to reach that higher existence of ourselves, or to have that greater experience of ourselves. But you need a practical application for it. There has to be a real world, tangible doing of it. So that's why, my work is a mixture of tactics, transformation, and channeling.
Yeah. And also, I think this rings true as well, that you sell them what they want and then you give them what they need. And if they're like wanting the revenue increases of 10x or whatever it is, and they also become a much more fulfilled and integrous human being or soul living in a human being in a human existence, then that's the best of both worlds.
Well, yeah, I mean that's why I call it revenue kung fu, because I've often said if a highly searched term on Google was somebody who can help me tap into my true beingness so that I can make a whole bunch more money, I'd be a billionaire right now, right? Nobody goes out there saying I want to tap into my beingness to get rich. They go out there and like, how do I get more people to click on my email? How do I get more people to click on my post on Facebook? How do I get more awareness for my upcoming event? And that's not their fault. Yeah. That's conditioning. That's society. They've been trained to go. You can only go looking for what you've been told you should go looking for. If you're lucky enough, the thing you actually need will find you as you're looking for, what you've been told to go look for.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like another way to put it is if you're being told that there's this really delicious Indian dessert called a gulab jamun, you really should try it. How motivated are they going to be to try it because they've never experienced it before? And, once you don't have that taste of what you've maybe had in the past or in maybe even in another life, where's the desire to go have it? So
I couldn't agree more, man.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're a little over time, so I want to be respectful of your time. Where do we get? Where do we send our listener to get more information about working with you and more of your wonderful brilliance and some of the teachings and materials that you have online? Where should they go?
I have no idea. No. No. Well, obviously, there's my website, which is erikluhrs.com, ERIKLUHRS.com. It is at present painfully short, but I always kind of meant it as a business card online. But I will be adding to it in the near future. More can be found by going to LinkedIn and just either type my name in or type in Bruce Lee of Revenue Generation. There's only one on LinkedIn. That's me. There's a lot of my background and materials there. I'm on Instagram, Erik Luhrs. I'm on Twitter, Erik Luhrs. I'm on Facebook, Erik Luhrs. So I think if you just Google me, apparently there's a lot of me out there.
So You're prolific.
I'm hard to miss, apparently.
Very good. Well, thank you, Erik. This was enlightening and inspiring. You're such a good dude, and with such a big heart, and you're willing to put yourself out there in ways that a lot of people would be afraid to. And I congratulate you on that, and I appreciate that about you.
Well, thank you, my friend. It's good to be your friend, and I've truly appreciated the opportunity to share with your listeners, and I hope that they got whatever it was that they needed from this episode.
Yeah, I think they did. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Erik, and we'll catch you on the next episode of Get Yourself Optimized. I'm your host, signing off.